Alright, so I'm coming at you with pages 7 to 13. Remember that you should be following along with the slideshow that is linked in the Schoology course of the pages. So then you can kind of see what I'm working with. So, today is wonderfully good. The mail has come and almost every man has a few letters and papers. We stroll over to the meadow behind the billets. Crop has the round lid of a margarine tub under his arm. On the right side of the meadow, a large common latrine has been built, a roofed and durable construction. A latrine is another word for a toilet. But that is for recruits who as yet have not learned to make the most of whatever comes their way. We want something better. Scattered about everywhere, there are separate individual boxes for the same purpose. They are square, neat boxes with wooden sides all around and have unimpeachably satisfactory seats. On the sides are hand grips, enabling one to shift them about. We move three together in a ring and sit down comfortably, and it will be 2 hours before we get up again. I well remember how embarrassed we were as recruits in the barracks when we had to use the general latrine. There were no doors, and 20 men sat side by side as in a railway carriage, so that they could be reviewed all at one glance, for soldiers must always be under supervision. Since then, we have learned better than to be shy about such trifling immodesties. In time, things far worse than that came easy to us. So what I'm getting here is they used to have to poop or go to the bathroom, whatever, with no doors. They were just sitting, letting it all hang out, and that was cool. They had to get used to it. Definitely not something that I would want to be doing. So that's just me personally, though. Here in the open air, though, the business is entirely a pleasure. I no longer understand why we should always have shied at these things before. They are, in fact, just as natural as eating and drinking. We might perhaps have paid no particular attention to them had they not figured so large in our experience, nor been such novelties to our mind. To the old hands they had long been a mere matter of course. The soldier is on friendlier terms than the other men with his stomach and intestines. 3/4 of his vocabulary is derived from these regions, and they give an intimate flavor to expressions of his greatest joy, as well as of his deepest indignation. That's embarrassment. It is impossible to express oneself in any other way so clearly and pithily. Our families and our teachers will be shocked when we go home, but here it is the universal language. Enforced publicity has, in our eyes, restored the character of complete innocence to all these things. More than that, they are so much a matter of course that their comfortable performance is fully as much enjoyed as the playing of a safe, top-running flush. Not for nothing was the word latrine rumor invented. These places are the regimental gossip shop and common rooms. So basically they're saying they just gossip while they're in the bathroom. We feel ourselves for the time being better off than in any palatial white-tiled convenience. There it can only be hygienic. Here it is beautiful. These are wonderfully carefree hours. Over us is the blue sky. On the horizon float the bright yellow sunlit observation balloons, and the many little white clouds of the anti-aircraft shells. Often they rise in a sheaf as they follow after an airman. We hear the muffled rumble of the front only as a very distant thunder. Bumblebees droning by quite drown it. Around us stretches the flowery meadow. The grasses sway their tall spears, the white butterflies flutter around and float on the soft, warm wind of a late summer. We read letters and newspapers and smoke. We take off our caps and lay them down beside us. The wind plays with our hair, it plays with our words and thoughts. The 3 boxes stand in the midst of the glowing red field poppies. We set the lid of the margarine tub on our knees, and so have a good table for a game of scat. Crop has the cards with him. After every misery overt, we have a round of nap. One could sit like this forever. The notes of an accordion float across from the billets. Often we lay aside the cards and look about us. One of us will say, "Well, boys," or "It was a near thing that time," and for a moment we fall silent. There is in each of us a feeling of constraint. We are all sensible of it. It needs no words to communicate it. It might easily have happened that we should not be sitting here on our boxes today. It came damn near to that. And so everything is new and brave, red poppies and good food, cigarettes and summer breeze. Crop asks, "Anyone seen Kemerick lately?" "He's up at St. Joseph's," I tell him. Mueller explains that he has a flesh wound in his thigh, a good blighty. We decide to go and see him this afternoon. Crop pulls out a letter. "Kantorek sends you his best wishes." We laugh. Muller throws his cigarette away and says, "I wish he was here." Kantorek had been our schoolmaster, a stern little man in a gray tailcoat, with a face like a shrew mouse. He was about the size of Corporal Himmeltoss, the terror of Klosterberg. It is very queer that the unhappiness of the world is so often brought on by small men. They are so much more energetic and uncompromising than the big fellows. I've always taken good care to keep out of sections with small company commanders. They are mostly confounded little martinets. During drill time, Kantorek gave us long lectures until the whole of our class went, under his shepherding, to the district commandment and volunteered. I can see him now as he used to glare at us through his spectacles and say in a moving voice, "Why won't you join up, comrades?" These teachers always carry their feelings ready in their waistcoat pockets and trot them out by the hour, but we didn't think of that then. So basically, Kantorek is their old teacher at school, and he wanted each of them to join in the war effort. And so he kept persistently being like, boys, you got to join up, blah, 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 support your country. Kind of like what we read in the British soldiers article last week. 2 weeks ago now? Last week. Time is a lie. There was indeed one of us who hesitated and did not want to fall into line. That was Joseph Bem, a plump, homely fellow, but he did allow himself to be persuaded, otherwise he would have been ostracized. That's one of our vocab words. And perhaps more of us thought as he did, but no one could very well stand out, because at that time even one's parents were ready with the word coward. No one had the vaguest idea what we were in for. The wisest were just the poor and simple people. They knew the war to be a misfortune, whereas those who were better off and should have been able to see more clearly what the consequences would be were beside themselves with joy. So basically saying if you lived in a rural area or you were poor, basically you knew that war was bad, and if you were more affluent or rich, you were excited because you thought the war offered great opportunities. Kaczynski said that was the result of their upbringing. It made them stupid, and what Kat said he had thought about. Strange to say, Ben was the first of us to fall. He got hit in the eye during an attack, and we left him lying for dead. We couldn't bring him with us because we had to come back helter-skelter. In the afternoon, suddenly we heard him call and saw him crawling about in no man's land. He had been knocked unconscious. Because he could not see and was mad with pain, he failed to keep under cover and so was shot down before anyone could go and fetch him in. Naturally, we couldn't blame Kantorek for this. Where would the world be if one brought every man to book? There were thousands of Kantoreks, all of whom were convinced that they were acting for the best in a way that cost them nothing. And that is why they let us down so badly. So basically, these teachers were not going to be the ones coming up into the war. So whatever they had said, they were not going to have the results of those actions be put on themselves. It was only going to be from the kids. They were the ones that were going to experience the brunt of these decisions. For us lads of 18, they ought to have been mediators and guides to the world of maturity, the world of work, of duty, of culture, of progress, to the future. We often made fun of them and played jokes on them, but in our hearts we trusted them. The idea of authority, which they represented, was associated in our minds with a greater insight and a more humane wisdom. But the first death we saw shattered this belief. We had to recognize that our generation was more to be trusted than theirs. They surpassed us only in phrases and in cleverness. The first bombardment showed us our mistake, and under it the world as they had taught us broke into pieces. While they continued to write and talk, we saw the wounded and dying. While they taught that duty to one's country is the greatest thing, we already knew that death throes are stronger. But for all that, we were no mutineers, no deserters, no cowards. They were very free with all these expressions. We loved our country as much as they. We went courageously into every action. But we also distinguished the false from the true. We had suddenly learned to see, and we saw that there was nothing of their world left. We were all at once terribly alone, and alone we must see it through. So before this video, I asked you to write some notice and wondering, or think about what you notice and wonder in this. I want you to add those into your response section of your virtual journal. And then after that, I believe I'm just going to pick up with the next reading section. So make those notice and wonderings in that response journal, and I'll have some more reading for you.